Hi, welcome back to See Maven Knits. This is episode 4. I missed last week. I ended up going to my mom's and we spent some time together, so that was great. But I'm excited. I missed doing this. So that's a good sign. Today, well, I'll start with, in case you've not seen any of these episodes, I basically sit for an hour and knit. And I chat about whatever I'm thinking about, and you're welcome to come and knit along, or craft, or do whatever you want to do. And yeah, it's good. It's sort of one of those, you have a knitting circle, but that only happens when everybody agrees that it happens, and sometimes you're just lonely. Sometimes I get lonely and I just want to hang out and knit with someone. And so what I started to do was knit in front of a camera. And then it's sort of like a virtual knitting circle. I can pretend you're there. My glasses are really dirty. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do, basically, is knit and drink some tea. I got this cool mug. I don't know if you know about Reddit. Have you heard of Reddit before? It's like an online forum where things are, you'll say something, whatever it is that you bring to the forum, and then people will vote it up or down. And so everything that's on there is kind of ranked according to how people feel about it. I don't know if that's a good thing, but basically they also have a gift exchange. And before it was like a Christmas thing, and now it's like all the time. Every time they run like 4 or 5 different themes, and then you'll like mail out your gift or whatever, and then when it's all done, then they'll have another set. And so this past time was a Harry Potter one, and so this is this cool mug. It's like Marauder's map, I guess. But the rad thing is that the mug starts out the color of the handle, and then when you pour tea into it, hot tea, then it turns color. So it's originally black. It's pretty fun. And I just think it's really cute. So I'm drinking my tea, and I seamed my sweater that I was making. So basically I was making the Stonecutter's cardigan off of Ravelry. And yeah, I think the last time we talked I was knitting the sleeves and I was at the armpits. And so I finished the sleeves, and now dun 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 dun. Look at those pockets. I don't know, I'm pretty happy with it. It fits really well. I'm not going to try it on though because I want to wait till it's done before I put it on in front of you. But I've tried it on and it fits. It's like kind of loose, which I like. And yeah, I'm really stoked. So the next thing I have to do is the button bands. So I'm going to do the button bands up to the collar. And I'm going to leave the stitches live at the top. And then I'm going to pick up the stitches around the neck and do the collar. So there's like less seams. And maybe... So here are my buttons. It looks quite nice. I like that color. I tried some wooden buttons, like kind of burnt. You know how they have wooden buttons and then they're kind of burnt a little bit? It didn't look right. It looked a little too rustic for the cables I feel like are really sophisticated. And they want something a little bit more like classy. I don't know. That's what I'm feeling. So I'm going with that. So what I'm going to do now is I have to roll up another skein so that I have another ball ready to go for my button bands, and then I'll be knitting the button bands. Ah, yeah. That's what I'm gonna do. So I'd love to hear, what are you knitting? Are you knitting on the same thing you were last time? Because that was a couple weeks ago. Or have you started something new? Yeah, maybe post a, oops, whoa, sorry. Maybe post a picture. I'd love to see a picture or a link to the Ravelry pattern or whatever. That would be fun. Yeah, and did you like bring tea? Do you have tea? Maybe some cookies? I really need tea right now. I feel pretty dehydrated. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. I started doing this thing where I roll the ball by hand. I have a skein winder, or like a Swift, you know, those big giant wooden things, and then a ball winder. But it's annoying to get out, honestly. It's just easier to do this sometimes, and it's kind of therapeutic. What do you do? I've seen people with those little sticks that they're like, brrr, and then the ball's all kind of cool. Yeah, what do you do with your skeins that you get at the store? So I'm making a center pull ball, which means that the yarn comes from the inside and then the ball's not rolling. Well, it rolls sometimes if it's really tight in there, but mostly it doesn't roll all over the floor or flop around. Yeah, but I lost my string. Can you hear the bird outside? I wonder if the microphone picks that up. It's pretty cute. I feel like it's pretty close. Okay. Getting there, which means it's turning into a bit of a tangle over here, of course. So last time I talked a little bit about my anxiety, my anxiety, like it's like my arm. No. Um, the anxiety that I've been experiencing for the past 5 months-ish. Yeah, I uh, I'm sort of at that point where I feel like it's there and it doesn't seem to matter what I do necessarily. It's never like gone. Um, and I've read forums and things of people talking about that feeling of just having to kind of move on even though it's there. And that's, I think, where I'm at, sort of. It's not always so simple, but it kind of happened one day. I had to go to the mall and I had to get something. And I was feeling really anxious and I didn't really want to go, but I was like, what am I going to do? Just sit at home? Like, it's not going to make me feel any better. And so I went anyway. And I just felt anxious and kind of sick to my stomach and not that good. But yeah, I'm tired of it running the show a little bit. So lately, I've been feeling like being at home is part of the problem at this point. I took the semester off of school and I just sort of stopped doing a lot of things, and boredom and loneliness don't help. so so I decided to start volunteering, and it felt like, for me, I don't know what it's like if you have any anxiety, but for me, commitment is it's hard. I don't trust myself that I can keep it. And especially after leaving school last semester, I think I feel kind of bad about that, or like a little bit ashamed. I don't know. All the crazy stuff that goes on in our heads, but so I decided that the easiest way to kind of recommit, to become accountable to other people and that sort of thing, would be to start volunteering, because while they count on me, it's not like a job where I'm getting and there's something like I'm going to get fired if there's a day where I just really can't do it. And my interests lie in seniors right now, senior care. And so I'm volunteering at a home for seniors with dementia. And yeah, I went, it was my first day yesterday, which is sort of why I didn't record the video yesterday, because it was everything. I had all these things that I planned to do during the day, and then it did not come together by the end of it. And so that's kind of the way it is, I think, when you introduce something new into your world. And so here I am on Friday, and this ball of yarn is being very tangly. But yeah, so that was my first day yesterday, and it was hard. Like, it's hard to see people feel confused and frustrated, and I kind of like the ones, or I find it easier when they are sort of oblivious, or at least they seem oblivious to what's happening to them. The frustration that they feel it pulls at my heart. But at the same time, even though I'm there to help and there to, hopefully make them feel less lonely and brighten their day, it's giving me so much already. I feel that I feel like it's so real to go and hang out and talk to these people who, yeah, it's like, that's real life. That's what I am feeling. Yeah, and today I'm gonna go again in the afternoon. So it'll be, yeah, I feel like this is exactly what I need to be doing, and that's a great feeling. Do you volunteer anywhere? Your time? Do you do volunteer knitting? Like sending knitted projects away? I'm too slow at knitting to do that. I feel like if I did that, then I wouldn't be able to knit for myself because it takes too long. But this is something that I can do, and I like it. So that's fun. Do you all work? Or are you going to school? Or are you actually like a knitting artist? Do you use that as part of your career? I'd love to know. Yay. Okay, so now I have to pee, of course, and then I'll be back and I'll start my button band. One moment. Okay. So, just going to make sure that I have the right needles. Yes. Okay, and then, so the pattern is, it's for snaps, she's decided. Which, I don't like snaps on things, except maybe baby things. I think that would be easier, snaps. But that means that the button band, I haven't made very many button bands, and most buttons that I've made have been like horizontal, so the ribbon goes sideways instead of up and down. But I do think that the up and down ribbing looks more, well, store-bought. And it's not that that's what I'm going for. I'm hoping that my knitting looks better than store-bought. But I want it to not look all homemade. Yeah. So I'm gonna try and, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna knit the button band where the buttons go. And then once I have that the right length and the buttons all like lined up, then I can decide how many rows between each button hole, and I'll knit the other one. Yeah, so it's going to be a bit of an experiment. And I'm knitting the button band a little bit wider than she has it, because I think my buttons are bigger than her snaps are. So she calls for 10 stitches. I don't know why this has to be so long. Oh well. She calls for 10 stitches and I'm doing 12 wide. So we'll see how that goes. You can really hear these needles, huh? Or maybe not, but I can really hear them. So let's talk books, shall we? I've really taken to reading this year. I used to read a lot when I was young, and I did my degree in literature. So that's a lot of reading. And for some reason, I guess part of it was that I really enjoy knitting, and I couldn't read and knit at the same time. And so I didn't really read that much over the past while. And you know when you kind of get out of the reading market and you don't really know what books are coming out and what's good. I'm totally, it's taken me a while to claw my way back into having books that I'm interested in. And I'm still reading old books for sure. Right now, I just started a book called Mary Poppins. You've probably seen the movie, but maybe not. It was with Julie Andrews by Disney, and what sort of sparked it was that there's a movie on how Walt Disney got the rights from, I think it's Paula Travers is the writer, and how it was a long process before he actually got the rights, and she was never really happy with the movie. And so that movie's called Saving Mr. Banks. And I watched it, and then I was like, that's weird. I've never read Mary Poppins. And there's a whole bunch of them. There's probably 5 or 6 of the books, and they're kids' books. But I feel like it's fun to catch up on stuff that I missed as a kid. A while ago, I read all of the Chronicles of Narnia books, which I didn't super enjoy all of them. They were good, but I don't know, they just didn't really totally appeal to me. And but it was just neat to read it and be like, okay, yeah, I get that. I read that, and I see where he's coming from, and you see kind of quotes or references or allusions to these writers that we supposedly read as children, and then you don't really know what they're talking about. And now I feel like I know what they're talking about. And so I read that, and what else? Well, of course, Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter. And Le Petit Prince, because I did my degree in French literature. I always thought it was really strange that I never read that book. It's been translated into a million languages, but I wanted to read it in French, so I got it and read it. And it's cool. It's a really beautiful book, and I can see why you'd want to read it in French. So I recommend that if you can read French. It's not super hard, but there is quite a bit of vocabulary there. So I'm reading Mary Poppins sort of before bed, like as a book, as opposed to an audiobook. And I'm also reading a book called... This is funny that I can't remember what it's called. It's called Talking Hands, and it's about how sign language is formed. Sign language is super interesting to me, so I like reading about it. And basically, it's a Bedouin village in the Middle East where there's a high percentage of deaf people, sort of like Martha's Vineyard was, and they've created their own sign language separate from the Israeli sign language, which is super fascinating to linguists, of course, because spoken languages, there are no newborn spoken languages. We just don't. That would be really weird for that to happen, because it would mean that there were a bunch of people together who didn't know how to speak a language, and then they had to create their own. There's creoles, which is when cultures mix, but and like language bodies mix, but to create an entire language that's linguistically like solitary and separate and like isolated, that would be the kind of experiment. It's called a forbidden experiment, where you take like 2 babies and you put them in a room and you just see what happens as they grow up. but it would be super interesting to know. And so this is in a way a manifestation of that phenomena. So yeah, it's good, and I'm reading it, so it's slow because I usually read when I eat, if I eat alone, or sometimes before bed, or sometimes I'll just read in the afternoon, but mostly I like to be knitting and listening to something. Do you read? Are you like a reader? I feel like some people are readers or they're knitters. Like you can't really be both. And I thought that was interesting. I think Yarn Harlot wrote something about that. But I think it's kind of true, because if you love knitting, then you're not going to sit and read unless you're amazing at reading and knitting at the same time, which I can't do very well. Yeah, or you listen to audiobooks. So I'm imagining that some of you listen to audiobooks. Well, yeah. I used to have an Audible account. I still have like my books on there, because when you close your account, you still have your books. But you can get them for free from the library. So I finished that one that I was talking about, the readers from Broken Wheel recommend, and it's quite cute. But I'd say overall 3 out of 10, just because the writing quality isn't what I'm used to, and the narration isn't awesome. But it's a fun read. It's totally a nice summer, I guess what they call a beach book. I like it. So I finished that one, and that was nice. Now I'm listening to did I close it? It's a book on... Yeah, I did close it. Yep. Okay. I think it's called The Story of My Life by Helen Keller. And it's her autobiography, as opposed to probably the one, like my mom read me one when I was a kid about her, but I think Anne Sullivan wrote it. I think it was from her perspective. So it's really interesting to hear Helen describe her life and the world as a person who can't see or hear. It's amazing. A lot of her perspective comes from like reading books herself and philosophy and other languages. She's like fluent in German, which is crazy. To be able to be fluent in another language without ever having heard it, I think that's amazing. It just, yeah, so it's not crazy, but amazing. And she also learned Greek and Latin and French, and she could read and write in all of those to a certain degree as well. But yeah, it's mind-blowing, her zest for life, and even just like, not just because she's blind and deaf, but as a person. Like sometimes I don't feel like my zest for life is even as anything close to what she has. And I have all of the opportunities of working eyes and working ears. So I feel like I'm crossing this road into not being very PC, and I hate that feeling. But I admire her, both for her disability and for just being a woman in that time and a human. Pretty miraculous life. But again, the narrator, not a fan. She's very monotone, which sort of goes with Helen Keller in a way, because her inflection would be very different. So it sort of snaps you out of the expressive reality that we're used to, but it's not that good. But the story is quite cool, so I'm enjoying that. And to get back into the book world, I listen to a couple of book podcasts that I sort of like. It's funny. I really enjoy books, and so listening to this podcast, I think it's called All the Books. It's quite good, but there aren't very many books that they've talked about that I really actually want to read. So that's interesting, because why am I listening to it then? But I do sort of like the way that they describe things, and it's fun to listen to. There's also a podcast by the same company that's called Book Riot, and I like it, but sometimes they can get a little heavy in the feminist and I don't know how to describe it, because it's not that I don't think it's important for people to have their voice and for us to not speak for people who are otherwise not speaking or unable to speak, or, like I do agree with that, but sometimes I find, I don't know if you find it, but on Facebook or just in the world, it gets a little overkill. Like people, it's like they're crusading for it, and it's intense. Like it's not receptive, and it's not a conversation. It's like, rah. And I find they can be a little bit like that. And that's a little intense for me. So, but I do enjoy listening. Book Riot's interesting because it's not a book recommendation. It's things that are happening in the world of reading and books. So, I don't know, different celebrities who are doing, powerful things with literacy, or stats on, how much people are reading paper books versus ebooks, and just super interesting stuff like that. So I do like that part of it. But I would like to find a book recommendation where I actually would read a lot of the books that are on the list. I think that's the point. That would be really cool. See, it's getting dark because my tea's getting cold. I can never drink a cup of tea before it gets cold. It just doesn't seem to happen. So yeah, do you listen to any podcasts, or are you reading any interesting books that you like? Any audiobooks that you find good? I think I've told you that I love the Outlander series, and especially the audiobooks are amazing, and I knit and spun while I was listening to them. But yeah, I'm super curious what you like, and if you have any recommendations for me, I would love that. The Yarn Harlot talks a little bit about knitting backwards when it comes to button bands, so you don't have to switch hands all the time and flip it over. I'm sort of curious about how that would work. It's never good when you're tired of the button band and it's it's only, I don't know, what is that, 3 inches long? Yep, it's time to stretch. Do a little stretch. So, that's the button band. I'm also knitting this other sweater right now. I've been knitting it for quite a long time. It was yarn that I got, I don't know, probably 2010, 2011. That's a long time ago. And what happened was, you know, like, if you've seen the blog, the giant gray sweater that I was knitting. So I was sort of knitting these at the same time, and neither one of them got finished. So this one is, there we go. That's a good picture. So it's pretty crazy. I don't know if I'm gonna like it or not. Like, I love it as art. I'm learning to differentiate between these things because sometimes I want to knit something because I love it as art, but I would never wear it. Which is fine. It's totally, like, that makes sense, right? The only thing is that when, like, this is taking forever. And, it's not art when it's in this form. It's very boring. So, it's been a bit of a slow go, for sure. but it's coming along. I have the front and the back done, and now I'm working on the arm, which the crazy thing was that I was knitting the front and the back, and I didn't read the instructions properly. And so basically, you increase on one side, so for these rows up till about here, you do short rows to make it so that it's, yeah, see how small it is and then it gets bigger? So for one half of the front, you do the short rows from one side, and then you do like a skinny sort of one with only like 3 stocking knit rows, and then you increase from the other side. So instead of starting with the short rows, you start with your stocking knit rows, and then you do your short rows. And so, it ends up being this triangle, but it's not just like a triangle leaning in one direction, it's symmetrical. Which totally makes sense, but for some reason, I didn't read the instructions. I read the first half of it, and then I finished that, and then I sort of finished the front, and I was like, I don't know, this is pretty small. But as you can see, there's all this weaving that you do afterward, and you add it on. So I don't know, I was kind of like, I'm not a super large person, so I was like, okay, well, I guess that it went to here, and I thought, that's probably good. And then I knit the other one, and so the first one I knit 5 years ago or whenever I started it, or I almost finished knitting it, and then the second one I started now, I don't know, in April or something, and no, even earlier, February. And so I started knitting it, and then I was like, this is way bigger than the other one. And I realized that I had knit the other one totally wrong. But I still knit the second one kind of wrong as well. I missed the middle part, the middle skinny part. So when I had to rip it back to that point, knit the middle skinny part, and then knit the other half, and then turn around and rip out everything that I had knit to begin with. So I was basically starting all over again. So after that, I just put it aside, and I was like, I don't want to think about this anymore, and I started knitting my cardigan. And then when I got to the point where I had to block this, then I couldn't knit anything because I didn't really know, I didn't have my buttons and, the whole thing. So I started knitting the sleeve. And then sure enough, I didn't read the pattern properly, or no, I was not counting my rows right, and then I had to rip it back again. It's cursed. Seriously. So yeah, that's where I'm at with this guy, is that I finally ripped it back with the help of one of the ladies at my knitting circle, and now I'm going to hopefully not make any more mistakes, because I'm getting to the very, very thin ice of my patience with this one. Funny. Do you have projects like that? I mean, I think a lot of people will just give up on them, which, people have mentioned that, but I have this thing where I don't like giving up on things. I feel like I want to see if I can make it work, and I love beyond anything that feeling of satisfaction when I did it, even against all odds, which is good. I think I have a pretty high degree of commitment and loyalty in that sense, but at the same time, maybe I don't know when to give up. But I think it'll be okay, because I do kind of want to wear it, or at least see what it looks like. It might be a little crazy for me, in which case, I don't know what I'll do. But yeah, tell me about your weird project that just is the bane of your existence. I know the Yarn Harlot has that Guernsey that's on her needles forever, and she hasn't finished that, and it plagues her. Or maybe it doesn't plague her anymore, but it's there. And I'd love to know, what's your kryptonite with the yarns? Wow, that was really sour. It's blueberry. See where I ripped it back? I'm almost at the fresh yarn again. We were talking about that in the knitting circle the other day, Monday, and you'll knit and then you have to rip it out, and you do, but you keep knitting because you wonder if maybe you can just be okay with it, but then you can't. That happened because it turns out I made more than one mistake, which that's going to start to make a difference as far as the size. And the one lady, Carolyn, was like, let's just rip it out. And I was like, okay. So then she helped me wind it up and everything. And we were talking about how frustrating it is to have all that knitting ripped out and then you have the wrinkly yarn, and how exciting it is to get past the wrinkly yarn and feel like you're not trying to make up for what you were knitting before anymore. That was the thing with that huge gray sweater, was that I had knit previous to that a huge cabled sack thing by Rowan. It was insane. It was huge. And because of the yarn, it weighed a ton. And I just felt because basically it was like a tube and then there was 2 armholes, I felt like eventually it would just get so heavy that it would slide down my arms and be just really finicky to wear. So I didn't want to knit it anymore, so I ripped it out, and I ended up with this huge, a huge ball of yarn, and it took me until the last sleeve to get to the point, I think, or maybe the sleeves, where I was knitting fresh yarn. And I tried to knit a different, a long vest as well, which the yarn was too thick for that. So it's just funny. But I'm getting to the place where I'm back in fresh yarn. Woo! And we're almost getting to the end of our time together. That went really fast. I'm shocked. I was sort of considering, because I have to volunteer, or because I'm going to volunteer this afternoon, that I wasn't sure if I could do the full hour. But then I looked at the clock and it was already 1:45 the hour, so I thought, well, may as well just do her. And yeah, I'm glad I'm doing that. So, my text machine, I needed to turn that off and forgot. So, do I have a question for you? I guess my question is, wait for it, there we go. Because we were talking about color last time, and I've been thinking about doing something with stranded knitting. And I'm sort of curious, if you are a stranded knitter, what did you start with? I once started with a mitten, and it went terribly. So, mostly that it was just my gauge, I needed to start with something else. So I'm gonna maybe start with a toque, which is humorous in this weather, but it'll be like big enough, I think, that it won't be so cumbersome, and I'm gonna do 2 colors. But I'd love to know what you're thinking about, what you did, or if you're gonna start color work, what you're thinking about starting with, and what colors you're going to use and all that kind of thing. And maybe next week I will have a little bit of my toque done. But yeah, it's been an hour, so we're done our knitting. I hope that you have a great day, and if you like what you saw, go ahead and like it. If you don't like it, go ahead and don't like it. I try and do it every Thursday. Of course, it's Friday today, so that's all messed up. But yeah, usually by the end of the week, I'm going to have it up. And if you want to be warned, you can subscribe. So thanks a lot for coming out, and we'll see you next week. Okay.